call the meeting to order?
You're the man.
Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 3:03 on Wednesday afternoon, September 30th. And we'll review the agenda. Be happy to try to answer any questions, and if y'all are okay, we'll adopt the agenda and then we'll consider the minutes from the last meeting. Can everybody hear me okay? Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Will we adopt the agenda?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous approval. Next up on our agenda is the adoption of the minutes from our last meeting 11 months ago. I think they are attached. Jill did a good job with our minutes and keeping up with them for 11 months. Thank you, Jill.
You're welcome.
Just like last time, we talked about a lot of different projects. It's kind of like the thing we did, and this time will be probably a little bit different. We'll talk some of our projects.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, unanimous. And with that, we'll move into item number, Roman numeral number 4, and we'll start with the financial report.
Okay,
Yeah.
Brad.
Tim, will you introduce
I
yourself?
will. If I think I've introduced you maybe online a time or two over the computer, but Brad Wright is our new deputy director. Brad is a CPA, comes from a long career with Verizon and or AT&T.
Verizon.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
T-Mobile.
Yeah. Brain flip there for a minute. But real excited to have him on. He's going to kind of walk you through a financial report. You know, he's been taking some of the standard reports that finance gets and gives out and puts them in a different format. Verizon was very big in monthly reports and things, and he's very good at pulling things together. So he's going to kind of walk you through where we are financially from the year and how what's been going on with the COVID and everything else. So Brad, I'll let you kind of walk through.
Okay.
These are in your package there. Probably going to have about 3 or 4 pages there of some graphs and numbers. But Brad.
You just take this off, or should I leave it on?
I'm okay.
Take it on.
Yeah, we're distant.
It just
it
makes it breathing easier.
So it starts with this Excel summary sheet is where he'll start.
Yeah.
So I tried to lay it in more of a typical income statement format. I know a lot of the reports are looking a little different, but it kind of brings it together on one page a little better. And what this is August year to date, where we stand today, and then I rolled it forward to a forecast for the end of the year. So I'll really be focusing on the end of the year numbers. But just going down to our main revenue line item, the charges for services. So we're forecasting of 68.6 million, which will be about 7 million short of budget. And the main reason that is, there's 2 components. One is customers are a little short than anticipated, and billed water itself is down a little bit year over year. And you'll see I do have some charts on the water, so I'll kind of hold off on that. But as far as customers, if you go down to the bottom of the page, you can see we're forecasting water customers at about 64,300, which will be about 1,400 short of budget. However, even though it's short of budget, it's still up 2% year over year. And looking back at 2019, we did about 2% growth. So it is kind of still on our trend. Sewer is kind of the same story. We're forecasting 35,400 ending this year, which is about 745 short of budget. And that's up about 3% year over year. Now, last year we went up about 4%, so it is down a little bit year over year, but I still want to make the point, even though we're short of budget, we're still growing year over year. So then if you go back up to the revenue, that 68 million that I was talking about, and again, that's 3% up year over year. So even though it's short of budget, the budget assumed we'd be going up 14%, so that was pretty aggressive, but it is a 3% increase. Inside the box is really just kind of a subcomponent of that. Those are the main drivers of that, of their charges for services. On the revenue, going on down, one thing I want to point out is that contributions from developers of 16.6 million. There is no budget for that. However, that is in line with previous years. I think in 2018, we did about 15.6 million, and last year we did about 17.5. So it is down a little bit from last year, although that is a forecast, and I think it does kind of come in a little stronger at the end of the year, so it could be higher than that.
Just so you know, that's a non-monetary number. That's contributed lines. That's developer subdivision lines. That's the assets that get added to the system. So it's not cash or payments or purchases of sewer capacity or anything else. It's mostly assets that developments that put in the ground and then turn over to us and we put on our books.
So when you go down to total revenue, even though it shows that we're going to be 9.9 million favorable, you do have to back that contributions out. So I kind of put in a subtotal underneath that. So backing that out, we should end about 70 million, which is about 6.7 million short of budget. However, the good news is if you roll on down into the expenses, you can pretty much see up and down the board, we're coming in favorable to the budget on the expenses. Again, that box is kind of a subset of the real operating expenses. I tried to just pull in there so you could see. And even those are all favorable with the exception of the purchases from the Fulton County on sewer. That we had 3.6 million and the budget was only about 2.5. And I think that was really because we had anticipated treating some of that sewer ourselves. And I think Barry's going to get into it with some of the projects are a little bit behind schedule. So then going on down to the total expenses, so we're about 7.8 million favorable. And then on a net basis, excluding contributions, so even though we're short on the revenue, we make up for that on the expenses, and we're projected to come in about 1 million favorable on net basis. So that's the P&L side of it. I'll keep moving just because I got 4 charts and I know Tim wants me to stay within 10 minutes. So.
This is a good one-page summary to look at our revenues, just hits the highlights.
That chemical that you're treating the water with, is that very expensive for that smell?
The carbon is pretty expensive, isn't it, John? That was not expected.
Yeah, for the couple of months that we've purchased so far, it was $20,000.
Okay. So 20,000, and that's a big scheme, that's not.
But it's just a couple of months worth and.
Yeah, so August year to date, we probably haven't seen the extent of that. It should start coming in, but we try to factor that in here too.
Why did we calculate was it based on history?
The growth.
Yeah, why did we calculate it so high?
Well, we
At
did
14%.
those numbers prior to, we did those like early 2018. And we started seeing a slowdown in growth right after we did our budget numbers, so we didn't go back. So we missed our population projections both last year and it carried over to this year. And then a lot of it, the rate studies projected things, but you'll see water usage is also down with COVID. So between those two together, it is the big reason we're way under our estimated budget.
But again, one of Tim's points is we start this budget like we'll start our 2022 budget in February. In about 4 or 5 months, we're gonna start our 2022 budget. And so we're way out when we start this stuff, so.
I just wondered where the 14% came from. Was it based on history or was it based on growth or based on?
A little bit of everything.
And I think we'll see a little bit of that next year for the same reason. We were doing the budget, and the only thing they have to rely on is the 2020 budget, not even really looking at actual. So they project off that, and it's overstated. So it kind of, in a sense, will make next year overstated.
Yeah.
I think a little bit also. But I think we'll have the same thing, favorability on the expenses. And that's one thing I kind of want to do is try to make it more tied in with drivers, the customers versus the water usage equals revenue. So when you do miss, you can kind of go back and point your finger at what's driving that.
It's sort of different than the way the county does it. Yeah. Dave is much more cautious, like he doesn't put,
Yes.
His growth rate, he always makes it
Very conservative.
Extremely
Yes.
conservative, so he comes in looking like a hero. He always does it so,
We got criticized for being too conservative back years ago, because when I took the job, they said always do the very same thing, underestimate this and overestimate, your expenses, and we tried to be more accurate, but we just finished the rate study. The rate study had projections in it, and we used some of those also in our calcs and the water that each home is using. I think we're gonna see the effects partially of our conservation rates too. And so that's probably means people
My
are
gosh,
using less water.
my home, you don't see that. I pay out the wazoo, but I mean, between my pool, my pool's been leaking water forever. I cannot
well,
get it
that's why then,
fixed.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
Cause I was gonna say, your pool with all this rain this year, you should.
No, it's leaking. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to have a $500 water bill.
Oh, wow.
What?
Oh, no, it's not.
By the way, does she have one of the meters,
Probably.
the new meters?
Because
Y'all might check. The new water meters that we now use have, most of them, have the ability to show you consumption by the hour. Actually, breaks it down to every 15
Make
minutes,
sure
I
you
think.
don't have a leak in your line.
Yeah, and
My
so,
line's, really far from my house.
We
well,
check
it
that.
would be worthwhile for you to get that report and see if there is a leak in the line. What it will show is like from 1 AM to 4 or 5 AM, when everybody's
Should be
asleep,
zero.
no usage. If you got a constant flow going through that line, that's a sure giveaway that you got a leak. You might wanna check. We
I
don't
have
have that on
irrigation, too.
everybody's, but we have it on a lot.
Okay.
All right, so the next page is kind of a graph on the billed water usage. The total one is, the top one is just total gallons. So you can kind of see the seasonality. It looks like it does appear between June and October where water usage goes up. I did look at year-to-date. If you add up through August, we are about 1% down on billed water usage compared to last year. I did notice, we had a spike last year in June, and it looks like this year we kind of are spiked in August, so it'll be interesting to see what September comes in. When we saw that, Tim did ask me to kind of go look at irrigation, so I do have a chart coming up too, of breaking out the mix where we kind of see maybe what's driving that. And then down at the bottom is new water customers, and you can kind of see it seesaws back and forth quite a bit. I don't see a really good trend. We actually should put like 5 years on here to see if, kind of how it happens, long term. This year is kind of an unusual year. You do see a drop in August, and Jill brought up a good point. There was a true up in August of about 40 compound meters that were counted as 2 customers. So if you normalize that, we would have had about 40 customers more, which made August about 79. But again, if you normalize and add up year to date, we are about 3% down here on new customers.
Maybe I think the way Tom's talking, and Tim, correct me, but we're seeing a lot more new permits this year than last year.
We're seeing new permits definitely coming in, so, yeah. I mean, we've got growth going on for sure.
Yeah, and the builders that I'm meeting with, the developers are saying that they're selling houses like hotcakes right now.
Yes,
It's not like
Market's
it
good.
was last year. Last year it was not the case, but everybody I'm meeting with are like, I don't know, I think a lot of it is the urban, people are leaving the cities. COVID and protest and everything like that are making people come back.
Right, it makes it much more appealing up
Yeah.
here.
especially if they figured out now they can telework, so they don't have to go in every day.
Yeah,
That's even
that
more.
too.
Okay, if you flip the page, the next one's really kind of a mix of the piece parts between residential, commercial, and irrigation. If you look under the 2020 column by month, I want to just point out down at the bottom, it's month over month. So May this year is up 5% over last year. In June, it dropped 17%. July's down 5%, and then August shot up about 21%. If you go over to the totals, year over year, we're down about 9 million gallons, which is about a 1% drop. But the interesting thing, if you go up, residential is up actually 5% year over year, which makes sense with what's going on. And it's interesting to see the commercial's down 15% and irrigation is down, 24%.
And the takeaway for me here is like Brad pointed out, people staying home, working at home, businesses being closed, you'd expect commercial to be down, you'd expect residential to be up. And I would say the irrigation drop is just strictly, it's weather and some conservation effects with higher tiers.
Yeah, kind of circle those 2 months, June, July. You can see irrigation is down pretty substantially from last year's irrigation.
And this is about, what is there, how many thousand just straight irrigation meters are there? Jill, do you remember how many thousand there are? I don't remember the number, but.
No, but John brought up a good point too. You see irrigation go up, you also see residential, and there's a lot of probably irrigation in that residential number there too.
Right. That's why I was mentioning that not every house has irrigation meter, some do, but a lot don't, so you'd expect the residential to go up in the summer months also.
Yeah, so the other thing I want to point out is the mix, circle that, just so you see the volume. I mean, residential is still making up 81% of them. I mean, that's the meat of it right there. With commercial at 13 and irrigation at 5, and you can kind of see year over year, like residential is only 77%.
That's similar to the tax digest.
That's our problem right there.
Yeah.
You just summed it up.
And then down below, put it in bar charts.
We just heard that at the Transportation Summit. It was worse. It was
Depends on every
80.
meeting you're at.
The number they gave about leaving the county every day, it was even worse. It was 80%.
That's not really many.
Yeah.
Wasn't that what he said?
75.
I mean, it was,
75% of people work outside.
Okay. You worried me when I just heard leave the county, I'm thinking.
no, to go to work.
Well, they come back sometimes.
It's just the same old bedroom community.
Yes,
Same old, same old.
yes. I wonder how that would compare to like Henry County, Fayette County.
We're about the worst there is. Everybody leaves to go to work.
Well, market is so much pays higher.
So on these bars, the last thing I want to point out, the page before we showed the spike was in June and August. You can kind of see them down below. What I found interesting, when you had a high month, it's every component. Residential's up, the commercial's up at the same time, and the irrigation's up. So it's not like you can see it all in irrigation or something. It seems like they're all, when they go up, all of them are going up, which makes some sense.
Yeah.
And then lastly, this last page is kind of a customer service discussion page. The blue bars at the top represent the number of incoming calls we receive from customers on this is an annual basis. And then the red line is our ending customers base. And you kind of see in the early years, it was almost a 1-for-1 ratio with the customers and calls. And then in current years, it's kind of a good news story. We've held the calls pretty flat, but yet our customer base is growing above that. And then on top, we added those other lines, the paperless and auto pay. So you see we started that in 2015 and it is steadily growing. And as of through today, we have about 23,500 on paperless and about 20,600 on auto pay.
And I wanted to expand upon that, just that you had asked Commissioner Mills, I think when we gave a report earlier about some of these programs and things we put in about staffing. And so I really think these number of calls will relate right back to the need for a customer service rep. So I think we can see here, and I would say that some of the changes we made when we added the auto pay and some of the other programs we have implemented, keeping the calls down, I believe it have kept us from having a need to increase our call center staff and personnel, and they're able to do this, and they've probably got some of the best and lowest hold times currently going on that we've had in many years. So on top of this, 10 years ago, it was expected to have to hold, 7, 8, 10 minutes before you get through. And now it's, less than 2 minutes, I believe, before you get picked up.
That's great.
So,
The sad thing is, I bet you can't hire young people to do this because they don't know how to talk on the phone.
Actually, we've got one that's really great. We have
Good.
one very young person, and she's probably one of
we
those
hadn't thought
top
about having to do this by text, but that may be the next.
When I was preparing for the suicide summit, I did this whole podcast on how young people, one of the big things is that, and there's a really true thing about some people when they go out to get a job, young people, that they can't like they won't take jobs that have to do with talking to people because they don't talk to people.
Yes.
I mean, because they've not engaged in any communication because they only text. And so they won't take a job that's got anything to do with talking to people.
Yeah, I believe it. I've listened in on a lot of calls since I've been here, and I've been impressed with our people, how they present it and how friendly they are. And I will say I've been impressed with the Forsyth customers, how friendly they are. There's a quick bond when they get on the calls, and both parties are very cordial and nice to each other, and they sound like friends almost, but.
Brad had some experience with that with Verizon, the customer service, call center stuff, and
Yeah,
How'd that
some
work?
of that stuff.
it's a different environment. That's a.
Not bad.
They like to talk.
And then lastly, down below, so those blue bars are really incoming calls, but more and more it's becoming, that's only about 54% of the calls that they're taking. A big portion are outbound calls and also other calls kind of between the reps themselves. And a lot of these outbound calls, those are collection efforts, they're returning voicemails to customers who have left messages. It's following up on issues and leaks and payments and cutoffs and cut-ons. So, and really to get a picture of their work volume, you really need to add them all together. And then we run about 9 to 10 reps kind of at a time, and about 3 of them are almost pulled off doing other duties. So we looked at it and said there's about 6 equivalent of 6 full-time reps taking calls. And I just played with the math, said with 6 reps and the number of calls, it's about 1,400 calls a month that they're taking. It's about 65 calls a day that one rep's taking, which is about 8 calls an hour. It comes down to about 2 calls for every 15 minutes. And the average handle time is about 5 minutes on those calls. And then those calls, there's about 1 minute to 4 minutes of documentation time after those calls. So when you add all up,
Documenting the file.
in the billing system,
Invoice.
yeah,
Okay.
the call, what the call, the notes and stuff, so,
Finishing a work order, whatever it may be.
so.
Good.
So it looks like then in the month of August, total, your reps received about 10,000 calls. Or didn't receive that many, but there were about 10,000
Yes.
calls handled by
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And about 5,400 were incoming,
Yes,
and then there was outbound, looks like was about 3,000, and about 1,500 were between them and other employees in the county.
yeah, so the incoming is about 54%, so the other 46 is, other calls that are. And I actually went ahead and looked at September, and September looks like it's gonna be pretty flat with August, slightly down, but it's about 9,600 calls, so.
And a few things we did, we during COVID, we pushed their meter sales over to, do that over the phone or, through email, so that generated more calls, but less trips in the office.
Yeah.
And, a lot more calls for collections or setting up arrangements and payment plans.
Tim, you'd asked about the devices to work at home,
Yeah,
so I
I
did
did.
grab one. It comes down to as simple as, this device, where they have a modem.
So
Where they-
explain that for us, please. What's going on so if we ask one of our customer service reps to work from home, what?
Well, really, I think they take their computer home, they have to take an office phone home, and they can plug this into the modem, into their phone, and they have full capability of taking calls, and just as if they're sitting at their desk. And then,
So they plug that thing right there into their home modem,
yes,
and then they attach it to their desk
Their
phone?
desk phone. The desk phone's the key.
Which is the
system
word,
recognizes their desk phone.
And then what, do they connect their computer to the desk phone? Is
No.
it?
that,
Some of them are actually using their personal laptops at home. They didn't have to take a county computer home.
A
So they-
desktop?
Yes, they can log in through the VPN.
Okay.
But the strange thing is that device, that phone is recognizable, and they could go from your office to my office, and if a call comes in downstairs, it thinks it's sending it over to West Maple where they're at, but it's going to their house. And it treats them just like they're sitting at their desk over at the other location, records the calls, we listen in on the calls, keeps up with everything.
it does work good, because I come in every morning, I have one screen, I can call them all up, but I can see the activity of the customer's taking call, and I can't tell if they're at home or whatever. It just works as well at home as if they're sitting right next to you.
It's really good for
Thank you
us.
for
And we
bringing
still
that.
have about 4 of them working remote, and we'll talk about that a little later on.
Actually, that's what's up next, report on the
Okay.
impact of COVID.
Okay.
I think, Brad, were you finished?
I am, yep.
Okay.
I think we'd shared some a little before, you know, when COVID started, I guess we were somewhat prepared in the water industry being critical infrastructure. We go through trainings and have things when we had the swine flu or bird flu being talked about a few years ago. So, you know, pandemic plans and things like that are something that get talked about regularly. So I think we were very good when we had to close down. Our plant operations were one of our biggest risks. Our contract operators, ESG, did a very good job of getting geared up with additional reports, monitoring chemicals on hand, how long does it take to get a delivery, because that was always one of the risks. If you can't get the chemicals you need to treat the water, you know, what do you do? John and his team, you know, worked with them really well, but we had to be very cautious. Our biggest risk, like I said, would be to get an infection in a plant where all of your operators have to be quarantined or sent home. And plants are all different. Even though they may know how to treat it, they all got their different ways and little quirks and things like that. So in the industry as a whole, operations was a very big concern and risk. We had the benefits through GAWP and others of having calls with 10, 20, 30 sometimes utilities at a time talking about COVID planning and what they were all doing. So we had monthly calls on those types of things. So I think we did very well. We were able to send most of our people home and work in a mobile setting. Our maintenance crews, we put them on a rotational shift for a while. Again, we've got a responsibility to protect the workforce in case there's an emergency to be able to respond. So for a while we had part of our staff on call and 2 crews working different shifts. We're back to full staffing now. We are back to doing all of our normal routine maintenance work. There was a time we stopped doing any of our sewer inspection work because there was a fear that this could be spread through raw sewage. And we had a fear of our men working in that environment, so we had to get some extra equipment there. So some of our inspections and routine things we did have to postpone for a few months. What we're doing now with maintenance is we've got them set up where before they all came in at the same time. Now we've got them rotating over about a 2-hour period. About every 15 minutes we've got crews coming in. Not all of the staff are allowed to come in the building, only the supervisors. The crew members may go straight to the truck, start getting it ready. So we're really trying to keep them separated and apart. It's still a risk for us. Our customer service reps, some of them didn't have full capability to work from home, but there was a time that we sent them all home. Ronnie Grizzle came into our office here to handle things because somebody had to be here to get the emails. We never could totally get away from having somebody in the building. Christina Jones worked over at the West Maple site and worked from there, and Ronnie worked from here when we were shut down. It worked so well with the calls, and we slowly transitioned all of them to working from home. It lets them spread out. We spread the others out in our space over there so they're not in cubicles right next to each other. So it let us use the rest of the space, and that part's worked very well. Now we have brought back in, because we do have space, we've brought back in the majority of the customer service team and the accounting team over there, and Brad's over there. For a while, John and his staff stayed apart. We were afraid for them being in the same place for he and his assistant both to get infected, so they tried to rotate, work from home. Barry and Jill and I tried to work separated for a while and not be around each other because our offices are right there in one little group. So there was a time we didn't, Barry and I rotated when we'd be in the office and the other one worked from home. It worked better for him from home and most of his stuff. I'm not as organized on my computers. All my stuff's in papers and books and and things and files that are scattered around, so it wasn't quite as good for me long-term to be away from the office. But Barry was able to work fine from there, so I don't think we've had a lot of, excuse me, real impact from COVID. I think the development side, we've been able to, excuse me. Get rid of that tickle. We've been able to do a lot more remote plan discussions with developers, engineers, and they like that. They didn't like driving an hour to get here anyway. So our office visits are way down. We still got people now that we've opened back up coming into the office, mostly I think to pay bills and to maybe set up a new account or have some discussions. We had like in September, between June and September, we've had 191 people come in for payment. So our numbers of visits in the office have dropped off drastically. We still have people coming in to meet with the engineering division and some of the other departments and doing meter purchases and things, but a lot less.
People meeting with your engineers are making appointments.
Making appointments. We still are limited in our conference room we're by the guidelines. We're only supposed to have 2 people, so we can't have big groups. We've had a couple of occasions where 2 people were supposed to come and 4 showed up with them, and so we had to find other places for them to meet. But we're doing well, handling it well. I think our services to the customers, except for being able to have the face-to-face meetings, sometimes, a lot of times it's just them trying to plan a project out and needing to know where a sewer is and really didn't want to get on the internet and research it that way. They want to come in and look at a hard map. That's one area we had to cut back on. I would say, going forward, a lesson from COVID in the future, if future facilities and buildings were built, I would probably say you don't want your command team, your management right in the middle of a high risk area with a lot of population. And we may need to be a little better separated, like we had to separate from each other a little more. That was an eye opener a little bit. I kept thinking about Pearl Harbor, just having all your all your ships in one spot. It was a little bit of a lesson there. But we had a lot of very good assistance from other utilities around and lessons learned. And there's concerns about long-term separation. We need to see our employees face to face. We need to have that interaction. We need to maintain those relationships. So long-term, I think it may not be fully sustainable. We need to have time that we're back together, because we still have our asset management group is in a space that they can't separate, and so we're having to stagger when they're in the office. And we need to keep building those relationships and being able to share other issues with them. It's just harder to do when you don't see them every day.
Do y'all have any questions?
No, I think at our retreat, correct me, Dennis, but Doug was gonna go back to department heads and regroup and talk about trying to get a plan to
Normalize again?
Yeah.
A little bit more, yeah.
Gonna look and see how fall break and, watch the numbers with COVID and see if it affects anything, but trying to, we're a little concerned with saying the word at risk, about employees, because, you don't wanna call attention to that, and then you run into the problem with, well, if your employee's not at risk, but their spouse is at risk, then you start opening up that whole can of worms with where does it stop and what's at risk, and where if you start defining, well, asthma and then or diabetes and obesity, and then the list, then you didn't mention this and heart's this and and then everybody will start fighting over, well, mine's worse than that. But then we started talking about, well, where does it get to the point where you've got some employees that just don't want to come back to work?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Well, we had we had a new employee that started and worked a couple of weeks and didn't like the,
She didn't work
and
that, she
quit
didn't make it a week.
a week, just didn't come back because she was concerned about it. So that's true. We knew that'd be a problem. Some don't want to come back. We've had some people who've had family and people who've been really, really tragic.
So it sounds like we'll be working on a plan to come back and kind of be more normalized or more the way we used to be to the extent we can.
And do an assessment of, is there jobs, I mean, have we
That can-
discovered that
Yeah.
there's jobs that maybe are not needed?
Yeah.
Anymore?
And I think one of the ones that stands out to me is the customer service reps. When they've got that little device and they can be at home and we can monitor their productivity and know what they're doing and have recorded, to me, that would seem to me to be a job that they could do from home.
Yeah, that's great.
That seems to be the trend for call centers.
Yeah, that's
The
great.
answering service that we use that's after hours, they're in Louisiana. And a lot of their staff work from home, work from different areas.
That's wonderful.
Even Verizon, I think they have over 10,000 call reps. I think they're all working from home now.
Well, Comcast, all theirs is working in another country.
India.
Yeah, every time I get so mad I could just strangle them. They can't even understand me and I can't understand them. I hate to even call.
Our construction inspectors, they make plans to come in, because there's several of them in a very tight space, so they come in, or they go straight to their truck, so we fixed it where they don't have to come in as often. And most all of our people, except for a few CSRs and a couple that rotate, are in the office now. We don't have a large contingency of people working from home.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move us on. John, you wanna talk about Geosmin and MIB, or is it Barry?
Well, I've got the
who's
plan
that?
overview.
Barry's got the plan.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, up next is plan review. Sorry about that, Barry.
Yeah, no problem.
And you've got reports in our packet too.
Yes. So I'm just gonna give you all an update of the plant projects that we have underway right now. There's 7 on the handout that you have, and I've got 10 minutes, so we have to go through them pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
We'll hit the highlights here, and y'all can ask me any
And
questions.
you got pictures too.
Yep, there's some pictures back there. We'll get to those. Okay, I'm gonna start out with the water treatment plant expansion. So the one currently under construction, it'll bring the total plant capacity to 33 million gallons a day. Just some background information to remind you, it's an $18 million project. It adds 5 MGD of capacity. It adds a chlorine dioxide treatment process, which will help us treat manganese on the membrane side of the plant, really, although it'll be able to help on both. A new north high service pump station to get the water out to the customers. There's a new electrical building that goes with that. A gravity sludge thickener is being added to help us with our solids handling capability. So right now the completion date is December 2nd, 2020, with the change orders that have been approved and the weather days. It's a bit of an unusual situation. The contractor says he's going to be done by December 2nd. We feel like he's several months behind, but we'll see how that works out. Just this week, he said he understands that date and intends to meet it. The board did approve a task order amendment for us at the last work session on September 22nd, which gives us the ability to do construction management with Jacobs through June 2021. So that tells you how we feel the project is way behind. We feel like it could go as far as May or June. There's some photos in there of the water treatment plant we can look at if y'all want to flip to those.
Good pictures, Barry.
Yeah, we do aerials out there pretty frequently, so.
Are these drones, Barry?
It is drone foot, yes, drone imagery. So the first one there, if you look over on the right side of the picture where the big gray tank is, you see kind of a little runway down there right in front of it. That is the road to the new high service pump stations, and that's what's going in right to the left of that. If you flip over to the next one, kind of looks at the plant from the front, or from as you drive into it. The first.
Is this based on projected numbers or actual numbers or
Which numbers?
What, the upgrade?
So the 33 million gallons,
Yeah.
that'll,
Master plan.
yes, that'll be, the
Maximum
total,
capacity to treat water
right.
per day.
What we're needing into like what year or?
That'll kind of get us to where we are, probably next year, if we had a max day, it's all based on if we have one big day.
And drought.
Which we haven't had, because it's been raining lately, but you have to be ready for it, because we don't want to run out, so. There's another expansion right behind this one, because we're just barely keeping up. So if we had a big dry summer, we could hit 33 MGD right now. So if you look at the photo, it's kind of hard to explain just sitting here. Oh, if we could pull it up, it'd be great, but this one. Yes. So there's two sides of the plant, and the kind of left side is the membrane side of the plant, okay? And then the right side is the conventional side, which was built in 2001.
Now, you show that in another picture, don't you?
There's a couple more. You can flip again, and there's one more picture of the water plant.
You can tell by the bare dirt, the areas that we've been working on.
Yeah.
You've got some additional chemical storage up at the front, and you've got the solids handling facility. It looks like a big tank in the back. You can probably see the blue painting on the inside, the coating. That's taking the place of those lagoons right behind that picture. You might see some soil and silt looking material in there. That's when we remove the dirt that's in the water and clean the water up, we end up with a solid that gets removed. And we use those drying beds, but we've outgrown that, so we're having to do.
So Jill's got it on the big screen right there. That's the gravity thickener with the blue lining on it.
Yeah.
And then the lagoons behind there.
These are the old lagoons that we
Right.
used to use. This is the new.
And
But we'll continue to use those. The gravity thickener makes them more efficient. The next expansion that we do, we'll put in a solids handling facility, which will take those lagoons out of service.
We'll either a belt press or a centrifuge or something and dry it out.
Do we own the land that's just, north of there?
Across-
That's
It's not Central Park.
that's the
That-
part.
Oh, that is the park.
Central Park's over here.
No,
No, I'm talking about where the
Right.
trees are.
That's that track we bought off of Antioch a few years ago. Had those three houses. That's
Yeah,
off to the left of your viewing right
You
there.
got another view that would show that better.
And,
The other ones.
if we ever need to expand,
yeah, I remember when we bought those.
yeah, it's off to the left of that big tank. That's
All
our
right.
20 million gallon tank.
This is a raw water storage tank, 20 million gallons, right? So we pump out of the lake into this tank, the raw water, and then the raw water starts here and goes through the two different sides of the plant. And then finished water comes out this side of the plant and goes over here to the finished water tanks, two big tanks, and then they're pumped out from there. There's the control building right there.
I did that tour out there, and that's when I met the people that lived on North Old Atlanta Road. And that's when I got the idea for the Larry Mulkey and Bill Cantrell was walking through, touring there with them.
That's these
Good picture of some out.
Yeah. That's kind of a better view of the whole plant.
And behind the tank, the big 20 million gallon tank is that 3 or 4 acres we own.
Yeah.
Over
in
there. But we laid this plant out for 96 million gallon of capacity of the plans. The plans worry, but we may change it because of the process. Barry's gonna talk about it, but we've laid this out to expand right across through here by adding basins and membrane capacity, but we hope to do all the future expansion in that area right there.
All right, Barry, I'm gonna let you go ahead.
Yeah, let's jump to the second project on there, which is the water treatment plant ozone replacement and upgrade. So you'll be seeing a bid probably this month. It's coming in. We're going to replace the old obsolete ozone treatment equipment in the plant and the original plant. but we're gonna upgrade it so that it'll be optimized for treating taste and odor problems, MIB and geosmin, which y'all know about because we've been getting complaints about it. 3.5, we think it's around a $3.5 million project. That's $2.5 million for equipment and $1 million for the installation. Again, it'll help us with MIB and geosmin. So the bids will come in this month. We'll hope to get those before y'all. And then we'll also be bringing you a task order for the design. There will have to be some design for the installation of that equipment since it's being upsized and it's much newer than the old. It's not a simple replacement of what was there. The schedule for the construction of it, it's going to take a little while to get it designed. We hope we can beat this schedule that I'm showing on here, but I'm showing installation starting around September of next year with a startup by December of 2021. We're planning to use an on-call mechanical contractor, which will also be bringing you some bid information on that as well to do that installation.
Barry, is part of that delay because the equipment, getting equipment?
The equipment will take a while to get here. It's probably be at least a six-month delivery for the equipment.
Yeah.
And then we've got to get it designed.
The board approved us to do a study on the ozone and how much ozone we would need and this equipment, and we had that finished up just in the last few months. We're lucky we'd already started this.
Just look at all those trees. People say we have no trees in our county.
There's more now than was at the turn of the century.
Yes.
Absolutely, there is.
Yes, we got trees.
All right, so we'll move on to PAC number 3. Well, let me say one more thing about the ozone. That's really to help us on the conventional side of the plant with taste and odor treatment capability.
Yeah, and John, I think, has got a picture of the conventional and then the membrane side.
John will get into this some more.
Yeah, he will.
So let me jump to number 3, which is the PAC update, powdered activated carbon system. PAC is going to be give us capability to treat for taste and odor on the membrane side of the plant if we can get this working. So y'all have already approved a PAC pilot test to be done out there, and we have the equipment in place, ready to do that. What happened was we had an actual taste and odor event, as you know, and we used the equipment that was delivered on site for the test to do actual real-world treatment. So we're using that system right now. Yeah, Tim's pointing it out. We're using that system now to treat for taste and odor on the conventional side of the plant. So as soon as this taste and this event is over, we'll go back and do the membrane pilot test on the membrane side of the test with that equipment, membrane side of the plant. Membranes are tricky with PAC. The PAC could foul membranes, so that's why we have to do this test to make sure it'll work before we go into production on it.
Is there no way to and this is gonna sound really stupid, I'm sure,
There's no stupid
but
questions.
for us to know before it gets to citizens and it be complaints to know? Like, is there no way before the water leaves us that we are going, like a beep to go off and people, or us to
Well, that's not
know?
an
Let's let John get into
Yeah,
that. There's a
we'll come
lot
back to
more
that.
to your answer.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it just seems like there could be like a warning sign that our water is bad before it gets to the household, and people say, our water's bad.
There's not an automated thing to
You
do,
understand what I'm saying?
or
And that's
anything that can't be done without a lab test. But we'll talk about that
yeah,
some
let's
more.
let John.
All right, so let me see if I covered the PAC enough. So like I said,
Beep,
we'll
beep,
get
beep,
back
water
to,
bad.
we'll get back to testing the PAC on the membranes when we get this event.
Like
over
a level, like levels are out, like a,
I'm gonna move on to number 4.
Yeah.
especially when you look at the dollar amounts we spend on things.
Yeah.
18 million, 60 million.
Nothing cheap.
Y'all, nothing's cheap about water and sewer. There is nothing, a membrane, I mean, everything about water and sewer is outrageous.
Right. It's expensive.
That
I mean, it's
carbon's about
expensive.
the consistency of snuff, so you can imagine how fine it is. That's why Barry.
It's like when you call a plumber, Cindy.
Yeah, nothing's cheap about a plumber, nothing. I mean, everything about it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, number 4, water treatment expansion to 40 MGD. So this is the next expansion beyond the one that we're doing right now. And there's another, $19 million project as it currently stands. That'll go up if we add full plant ozone, a full pack system, and other things are added to this. But right now, to add the capacity, it's at 19 million. That'll add 7 MGD of capacity, again, bringing it up to 40 MGD total. It adds membranes and equipment, solids dewatering system that we talked about a minute ago, replace those lagoons, high service pump station expansion. We just had a selection of a consultant to design it for us, and Black & Veatch was our top ranked firm. We're negotiating a scope and price with them now, and we'll be bringing a task order to you all in the next 2 months. The schedule for this one is to start design really into this year and throughout next year, and begin construction in the spring of 2022. And that'll be a 24-month project. Number 5, we're going to jump over to wastewater now. The Fowler 5 million gallon per day expansion, that's the one currently underway and almost done. So this was a $66 million project. That's the most expensive project we've ever built in the county, and expanded the plant from 2.5 MGD to 5 MGD. Some of the components were built for the next phase, which will go to 7.5. It included new headworks, an EQ tank, new biological treatment basins, new membranes and equipment, UV disinfection system, new sludge thickening and dewatering centrifuges, a new electrical building, 2 huge backup generators, look like train engines out there, and a septic receiving facility, which will give us the ability to treat septic at our own plant. The completion date right now, we think they should be completing in the month of October. We're having a few issues out there. They're a little behind. They got a few outstanding items, such as the overhead crane that will handle the membranes. That is not done. We're having working through some operational issues, getting the treatment dialed in to what it needs to be to feed the membranes. We do have permission from EPD to treat to 5 MGD already, so we'll be ramping up the flows out there. And here's a picture up there that you can see of Fowler.
You kind of see the new addition by the different colors of the green roof. All this over here is new. All of this is new. The old facility was this, so we added better process treatment here before it goes into the old rework to that. Move things from here over here. This is all the new headworks.
But that was there when I went and toured it, wasn't it, Tim? Yeah.
This was,
Yeah.
right. We added.
Well,
back
when did
here.
you go through it?
When you first came on
It
board.
hadn't been that long.
Here's the big generators.
Yeah.
And so that's and this is the new equalization tank
Yeah.
that,
So that process was one where we had to maintain the existing plant in operation while we built around it. And we built almost a whole new plant.
Yeah.
a lot of rework on the original plant, a lot of improvements and upgrades.
I'm very glad to be through that, and we're very lucky that we haven't had major violations, major problems with that.
All right.
Are we still having to spend a bunch of money above what we normally did on where we take sludge and stuff that we used to
Yes,
take?
tipping fees on solids from wastewater is still, yes,
That's still a big problem?
yes.
I don't think that's gonna change. Those prices are not coming back down.
And a lot of things going on in the state on that, you've seen.
The next one, number 6, is another expansion. We're gonna roll right into expanding this same plant to 7.5 MGD. So it's mainly an equipment project where we add equipment to what's been built there already. A lot of it is built ready for that equipment. We just need to add it. So we're working on the permitting for that right now. We just had a public meeting last week. Well, it was earlier it was on the 23rd of September for Fowler.
Do we get complaints on Fowler about odor or smell or?
Not very often,
Rarely,
Yeah.
occasionally.
rarely. And remember, we got all those people recreating down there right beside that
Okay.
plant.
Yeah.
Rarely did we get something.
We did them in Old Atlanta.
Right.
But that's not our plant.
We can, and from the gravity sewer down below it, we think it generates from there. If some of our equipment, there's odor control equipment
Angela Johnson.
heavily installed here.
Yes.
All of the odor producing areas are air sucked out of it. It goes through the biofilter to try to improve it. But you're never going to be able to say that there's no odors.
Nah, Fowler's pretty good, should be in pretty good shape though when we finish what we're doing.
How much more land do we have there?
Not a
Good
lot.
question.
Well, we have a lot.
We have a lot, but it's being
Some of it's
used.
on the park. Some of the park's using some of it
We
right
let
now.
them use it. But,
So you're opening up a can of worms when you talk to these people with that question?
Yeah.
Because they, in their mind, they bought part of the area that's now ball fields.
Yeah.
And
We're
so-
supposed to have passive recreation on our land that wouldn't interfere with future construction, but it kind of grew to some running trails and other things.
Skate park.
But we don't need all of that if you ever expand it.
But
And they've already graded it for us.
part of this though is wetland that we can't ever use. So,
Finishing that one up, we're pretty far along in the design and the permitting, so we'll have it out to bid early next year and hope to start construction in April. And it's should be a short 18-month construction period. Again, it's a lot of equipment adding, membranes, there's an EQ pump that needs to go in, other blowers, another UV reactor. We got to do some work on the influent pump station, and there will be a cascade aerator. Big thing about this expansion is it will be discharging into Big Creek. 5 million gallons a day. We're getting a permit to put into Big Creek right there.
That's
that-
wonderful that they are gonna
Yes,
let that
it
happen.
is. Yep.
That bought us a lot of time from our need to have to possibly return to the lake.
so
Hey, I've got
believe it or
paper up in
not-
that parking.
believe it or not, the project number 7, when we expand Fowler from 5 to 7.5, that $15 million, that's a cheap project. Believe it or not.
Yeah, that's on the low end.
I
Shake
mean,
Rag, you get some complaints about smell, right?
yeah.
Shake Rag, we do not.
Oh, I thought you
No?
did. Oh,
No, I don't.
Amazingly.
It's pretty, it's pretty far away from anything.
Well, and a lot of people don't even know it's there.
Yes.
You wouldn't know
unless
it's
you
there.
tell them.
Right.
Yes.
Then they might start complaining.
One thing we
that's like the asphalt plant. There's an asphalt
Oh,
plant? Oh, I hate
yeah,
it.
then I gotta
hate
complain
it.
about it, yeah.
I didn't know there was an asphalt plant there. I hate it.
Before we leave this picture and something we may want to discuss with you, normally when we finish a big project like this, we have an event and we have an open house. We can't hardly do that now with COVID going around, but we may want to talk to you about doing some kind of online presentation, do some pictures, videos and things, and, kind of this is the biggest project we've ever done, and thank the contractor who did that. So we'll get back with you on that maybe in the next couple of months, doing something like that.
Y'all have school kid tours too?
We would have, but we can't afford to now with COVID. But,
John's done.
yeah, John does a lot of school tours.
John does a really good job with them too.
Well, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
The Shake Rag there, you kind of hit that one. So
Yeah.
it's an equipment exercise mostly, but we're ready to do that one too.
Did the deer hunting down there, is that still an issue?
It's not an issue because we don't allow deer hunting.
I've had so many people wanting to
They
go.
want to.
They'd pay a price.
Oh, yeah.
They want to take special needs kids. They'll do anything if they can go.
Can't we just charge like $200 a day and like?
You could, no doubt.
They pay it.
We can pay for these projects.
Yeah, people they pay to go to Texas to
Yeah.
hunt here and all, but.
Do a package deal to them, put them up down there and charge them like $2,000.
I guess I start getting those
Once,
calls back
once you
in.
start getting about that price, then that becomes a little more feasible, I think. Because you're gonna have to have people to watch them and.
But it's patrolled just so, it's patrolled by the DNR, we asked them years ago to keep
Right,
people
right.
off, cause we had the
Yeah.
deer hunters calling and telling on the horseback riders, and neither one of them was supposed to be on the property, but they were not happy with each other.
What about the moonshiners? Have you ran them out?
A few people sneak in every now and then.
All right, John, I think you're gonna talk to us about the geosmin and MIB. First, what does MIB stand for? It's initials for something.
Methyl isoborneal,
House.
and it's both of those compounds are given off by algae naturally occurring in the lake. Now, to address the question about trying to predict, if you'll turn to this graph, you'll see that back in June and July, we pulled a couple of tests just to see where we were coming out of the lake. And
Well, you pull one weekly. Looks like, John.
We skipped a few weeks.
Oh, I'm sorry, you did.
yeah, we
Cut to zero.
We have some, couple in June and we pulled one in July. And last year, when we got into the taste and odor problem, it came late in the fall and early winter. And we were trying to be proactive and stay ahead of this. And we tested in July, and as you can see here, the raw and the finished numbers are very low. And then on August 14th, we got our first taste and odor call, and we immediately pulled samples and had them tested on like the 17th. And we began feeding bags of powdered activated carbon, just cutting the bags open and dumping them in. And that occurred, I believe it was the 17th, we began feeding the bagged carbon. And if you look here, the gray line is the raw line, the raw MIB coming out of the lake, and the orange is the finished MIB. And even by doing hand bags of activated carbon, we were able to knock that down considerably, because it would have followed the raw line right through the plant, because conventional treatment doesn't take it out. So
Anything above 10, they tell us anything above 10, it's widely
Well,
noticed, but some people smell it a lot down below 5.
Take a minute,
Yeah.
John, and tell us what units, because we're talking about 10 and 80, and
Okay.
what units are these?
these are measured in parts per trillion, not millions or billions, it's parts per trillion. To give you a feel for what a part per trillion is, it's a second in 32,000 years. So it is a minute quantity, and we're talking about 10 or 12 or even 30. 30 seconds in 32,000 years is a ridiculously small number. But people are sensitive enough that they can smell it and taste it, even at these relatively low numbers, low
I could smell it when I was
concentration.
brushing my teeth.
About what's the detection level for most people?
Somewhere around 10 parts per trillion
Or
on either MIB or geosmin.
Okay.
And I think
But that's pretty widely. But then you have the sensitive people that the 5, that Gwinnett tells us 5 is the number not to have any calls. They've been dealing with this for a few years. They tried a few years ago to do some work on their ozone equipment, and they had a problem. And then we learned this. Since our plant's been built in 2000, us and the city coming, either one, this is the first event last December we've ever had. The lake, just a lot of things can contribute to it: sunlight, rainfall, lake levels, temperature, and but we saw Gainesville go through something in 2018, and that's where we really started paying attention and realized we're going to have to modify the treatment out there to be ready to attack this from multiple directions.
You don't think that this had anything to do with the smell? Or the smell had nothing, I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about the atmosphere smell.
I think it's a theory that others don't. I know people, the guy from Gainesville told me he was swimming in the lake during that time when it was turning over, and the lake was 6 degrees colder during this time than normal, so it looks like it turned over earlier than normal. He could smell it very strongly on his boat. I don't know.
But
I think it's a combination.
that was the earthy,
Yeah.
musty smell, not the
Not the sulfur.
sewage smell
Right.
that
And
was
it
permeating
was
the town.
smelling all the way, like, that was the weirdest,
It was a weird.
way
I mean, you
over
could
there,
smell it
yeah.
way over at Bethel View and
Yeah.
way down in,
Cherokee County Line.
Yes,
stopped to get
it
gas
was
one
the
morning.
strangest.
But then when the wind changed, Gainesville did get smells and calls across the lake the next week after that storm came through. But it was
Very
coming from
strange.
everywhere.
Did we have any complaints about these, algae and the microorganisms dying?
That's,
As a joke. I figured somebody complained that they grew.
Right.
Well, why are you killing
when
off
you
those?
kill it, yeah.
So we don't have there's no gauges that exist in our plant, like at Antioch, that shows these levels
So now you wanna talk about testing?
Sure.
that go, that you're looking at when they go out and it says these numbers, and like all of a sudden that if the numbers that would show these spikes and that the water was going out and these spikes were up, and we'd go, like an alarm would go off and we'd know that it was wrong.
Well, and we're trying to gather data to build a correlation. We can measure, online instruments measure temperature, measure pH, conductivity, dissolved oxygen. All those things can be measured online, and we've got a project in the works to get all that stuff put at the water plant. And maybe over time, we could try and do a correlation between these easily measured factors and taste and odor events, but I'm not holding my breath. And see, the problem
And
is,
Lynette and Gainesville had told me they haven't been successful yet.
No.
They're
Nobody's
trying
really
this.
And that just seems like
This is
something
a normal thing, some places
So easy to
places
do.
deal with this every year. It's just, for us, it's the first time. Some river systems have to deal with this every year.
Y'all talk
first-
about
the first lab that we came up with that could test down to parts per trillion is in Jacksonville, and they were charging $200 per test. We looked
It
around.
seems like it'd be so simple.
We just get a citizen to sit down there and.
It just seems like it would be measured all the time.
We do have a screening process.
Yeah.
We have a screening process for doing it, and you take a sample of
You
the
don't
water
laugh
and
about
you
this.
heat it up, and then you smell the vapor of the hot water that's coming off. You smell it,
They do a smell test.
and some people can smell it, and some people can't. John, y'all,
And that's what plants have, and they,
Yeah, we have been doing that.
you can't quantitate it.
And it's, how bad does it smell today?
but you can smell it in the raw water. You can smell it at the lake. It's the same compound that makes catfish taste and smell the way they do, and crawfish. It's the same compound.
And beets
Beets.
and spinach.
And some people are super sensitive to it. We've heard of families that one person's nauseous from it, and the rest of the family can't smell it in the same household, in the same water. And that's sort of that's the people we're getting calls from are the ones that are super sensitive. And it's nauseating.
As
I'm sure they all live in his district.
So who are we using now? How long is it taking?
right now, we found a lab in Texas, and they're about half the cost of the Jacksonville lab. And they can turn it around pretty quick. We overnight the samples, and then within a day or two, they give us a preliminary result followed up by an actual, hard copy test.
Unbelievable.
And didn't you tell me it costs about $700 for the
Well, yeah,
series?
it's $100 per sample, and in order to see what's happening through the treatment process, we have to do 7 samples at whack. So it's $735 to every one of these dots on the graph. Well, early on, they were $1,400 because we were using the Jacksonville
We could
lab.
measure that every time. You'd
It's
think it'd
just-
be
we're
on
just dealing with
a
that.
thing on the side and just measure
Yeah,
it.
trillion, it's
Yeah.
parts per
It
trillion.
blows
part.
my mind.
So it's,
I used to measure poultry meal, feather meal, and fat at the rendering plant. I'd have to stick it in the darn microwave and measure the moisture.
Moisture, yeah.
what we're able to do
Hated to
is
do
not
that.
eliminate it, but reduce it. So,
Stunk awful.
we have been good communication with both Gwinnett and Gainesville. they're watching their numbers. Our numbers this year are higher than we saw last December. Gwinnett numbers right now are much lower in the raw water. It's sort of isolated by location. Intake location is probably one reason we've got such high numbers. Gwinnett's in a better place for mixing and dilution.
Sometimes the elevation you take your water, your raw water off the lake, that sometimes has something to do with it. Sometimes deeper water has less algae, but sometimes it's the middle water that has less algae. So we're looking at all that. But the big thing is we're talking to other water purveyors on the lake that's using Lake Lanier water and saying, now we're talking. You know, what are you seeing today? What's going on?
But there's been national studies, documented studies, research on this for years, and it's all out there. And we, so many scientists and other people have been working on this for a long time. And ozone and activated carbon are the two top methods for filtering out the taste and odor.
And the carbon that we initially started with was intended for the membrane trial to check and make sure it didn't cause damage to the membranes. So we had that stuff on site, but we've recently switched because we're not feeding the membrane side right now to a different carbon that couldn't be fed to the membranes because it would definitely cause damage. So hopefully, and this new carbon is historically very good at taking these MIB and geosmin out of the water.
I want intro and then let John talk.
So
All right. John, anything else on geosmin and MIB?
that'll do.
And just so you know, we're tracking our daily calls, and right now 2 to 3 a day is what we're still getting on taste and odor.
So
Well, all you gotta do is post something on neighborhood next door and say the water smells, and you'll get a spike in your
Calls.
calls. It don't matter if anything's
John
happening.
mentioned the social media thing, the social media issue that we don't know if it's actually serious.
Or somebody's died, somebody's gotten some kind of flesh eating something from an amoeba
I
from
know it.
water or something, and,
We already started getting calls on that.
oh yeah,
And we,
that's
They
what I
want some
figured.
money, they want some money in the county.
City of Cumming's struggling with the same thing right now, and so, you know, we get calls from them, they get calls from us, I'm sure, and so,
And along that line, not to interrupt you, but we normally pull some water from the city of Cumming because we have to buy 400 million gallons a year. And we've stopped pulling water from Cumming because they were so much higher than we were. I didn't want to run the risk of causing worse problems for our customers by bringing city of Cumming water in. So, yeah, we stopped that, I guess, it was in August.
So if we get a new pipe in the lake in a deeper place, we won't have as much
well, they
trouble.
give you an option. And, I mean, like right now, Gwinnett's numbers are barely above the need to treat. And, it's not that far away, it's out of the water. And Gainesville's got one on the riverside and one on lakeside, and they've got a good bit of difference in their numbers. We share that with each other. It's a lot of things. If we're ready to go to the next one, I want to introduce this and this discussion on water and sewer issues. And what we wanted to bring forward, and something we're going to bring to the work session in a couple of weeks, is we've had some issues over the years, or this last year, with EPD and different violations. And we've got one that we are gonna have to do a notice on. And so it's been a while since we've got an expedited consent order from the EPD anytime you have any kind of a permit violation. So the intent here is to educate our customers of what's going on and what we've done and why they're about to get a notice. Says that we're gonna be required to do a direct mail out to them on the issues. And so John's gonna walk you through. We thought it'd be good to go back and go ahead and share, because we're expecting an expedited consent order for sewer
This was
spills and
on the
other
spill,
things.
the last one, was it on a?
Well, they'll be in there. You know, we've had some sewer spills. We expect those things. So since it's been a little over a year since we've
It's
gotten one.
February of last year.
And,
So what EPD does is they tend to package everything up, about once a year, all your violations, package them all up and send them to you and say, okay, here's all the violations you've had, and then, they say, here's your fine. Your fine is $5,000 or something for all this. And so we're expecting that to come. And so this is on both wastewater and water is what this is on. So John, I'm gonna let you jump in now.
Okay, we'll kind of run down through these
And
quickly.
here's your list. If you got a list in your package.
Yep.
Okay.
We had a phosphorus violation at Dick Creek back in February. It was a mass loading violation, meaning the kilograms per liter that we put into the river were higher than allowed. The concentration was in range, but due to heavy rains and higher flows, you have to take the concentration times the flow to give you your pounds or kilograms into the river. So that was just a kind of an oddball because of the heavy rains back in February. Then if you look down through your list, you got Shake Rag Fowler, June, and in July, all the same problem. It's CBOD, it's a carbonaceous BOD, which is a just measurement of the organic material in the water. And you can see we had a weekly average in June, and then we had that was a weekly average loading, and then a weekly average concentration. It was the same event, but we got nicked twice for it. And then
Who measures that? I mean, EPD comes
We do.
out, y'all measure it and send it?
Self-report.
it's self-reporting. And
It's a multi-day test, that's sort of one weakness, you don't describe the test, it takes what, a couple of days?
no, it's a 5-day test.
5-day test, so.
You actually take your sample, you aerate it, it's a oxygen demand test. So you aerate it and you put it in an incubator sealed up. At the beginning of your 5 days, you measure your oxygen. At the end of 5 days, you measure the oxygen. And then how much is depleted over that 5 days is the oxygen demand. So our limit at the Fowler Shake Rag discharge to the Chattahoochee is a 2.9 parts per million. And some of these we were close, some of them we were pretty well blew them up, but even so, 2.9 parts per million is a fairly small number. If you'll turn to the first picture, the Shake Rag Water Reclamation Facility. Here's the deal. We measure the CBOD coming out of this plant and coming out of the Fowler plant, and we were in compliance in both places separately. And then when you combined the two streams, we were out of compliance. So the blue line here is the line from Fowler, and the orange line is coming from Shake Rag. They come together right before that little rectangular box. So we figured that had to be contamination coming from other than the plant. So
John, what you're saying is that if you sample the orange line, it's good. If you sample the blue line, it's good. But when you sample the green line, it's high.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Before the orange line and before the blue line,
right, at the beginning of the orange line and the beginning of the blue line.
Okay.
which is back at Fowler plant.
And also there, Tim, we sampled there at that vault
Yeah.
to make sure, because we got 11.5 miles of pipe coming from the Fowler plant to here, and we thought we might be getting regrowth in the line. So to put that to bed, we sampled right there where the blue line starts, and it was 0 or non-detectable. So we figured it had to be coming from somewhere on site here within the pipes. We cleaned the cascade aerator, we cleaned that rectangle where the blue line comes in, and didn't matter how many times we cleaned them, we didn't get this problem to stop. So we got the jet truck and we jetted the orange line first. And the other problem is with this 5-day BOD test, you don't get instant feedback, you gotta wait 5 days to see if it worked. So that's why we got into 2 months worth of problems and violations. It wasn't that we were sitting on our hands wishing it would go away. By the time you do something and then get feedback for it, it didn't work, so then we jetted the blue line all the way from the flume area all the way back to that vault, and that took care of the problem. So we have both of those lines on a quarterly cleaning schedule, so we don't get into this problem again. And
These are sealed pipes, but there's open areas that material and things, and there's not a lot of good flushing, like the UV system is open to the atmosphere. So, bugs and things could get down in here and not get flushed out. And
actually, when we cambered it first, and there were dead frogs, and it doesn't take a whole lot of organic material from a dead frog to drive your carbonaceous BOD out of range, so.
but we,
John,
Should
I'm
we just
gonna let
schedule-
you go on.
Should we just schedule maintenance or clean it out so often,
Yes,
and that
absolutely,
way
that's
you
what we'll
don't?
do.
It's on the list, it will be cleaned quarterly. So,
Cause how much does a fine cost, or how much does a,
we don't know yet. They'll take the circumstances into account when they do that and what efforts you've done. The documentation of the efforts that the operators did is pretty substantial. All this has been shared with the EPD, and hopefully they'll take that into account when they issue these.
Doesn't the cab have about this many in every month?
They have a lot of overflows and spills.
don't ever compare yourself to DeKalb. That is not who you
You
want
know,
to try to
That's
aspire to
what I'm
be.
saying, I get that report
That makes
from
you, oh yeah, it's awful.
Nancy Jester.
From
and
the
she's
plant
got-
part, our goal is not to have any, so, we don't mind.
The real substantial part, this is pretty minor compared to.
What they do.
Yeah.
They're still under consent
To a
decree,
roster.
aren't they?
okay,
Down to the temperature.
excuse me. The Fowler Shake Rad temperature monitoring, we have to monitor the Chattahoochee River above and below our discharge to make sure
Right.
our discharge doesn't raise the temperature of the river. The USGS runs those gauges for us, we pay them to do that for us. And back in August of 19 and November of 19, there was some missing data. We notified EPD of the missing data, we had USGS fix their gauges. And I'm not 100% sure if we will see that as an actual fine from EPD, but I wanted to list it out of abundance of caution. Then,
We had to report it, so we turned it in, and it may show up, we just wanted to.
Don't report it and they find out about it,
Yeah.
that's when you get in trouble.
Absolutely.
that's right, you get,
Or with
In worse
missing
trouble.
data, you substitute data that's,
We take that real seriously.
Made up.
They will put people in jail, so,
yeah.
yeah.
we're very cautious.
And I signed the discharge monitoring report, so it's not worth it to me to
No,
go to jail. So, then we get to the water plant, and we had a situation October of last year. Every month, we have to pull 120 samples out in the water distribution system and check them for bacteria and residual chlorine. Somehow, in October of last year, we only pulled 119 samples. Well, even though it was one sample shy, the state is treating it as a failure to monitor, and we have to notify all of our customers that we did not monitor for bacteria in October of 19. And to make sure that that doesn't happen again, we're collecting extra samples now. We're pulling 5 extras just to make sure that we've got plenty. Just kind of a little sidebar to give you an idea. Every month at the water plant, our operators test 4,664 tests from raw water, filtered water, settled water, finished water, and
We want our customers to understand just how tested water is. We're afraid they'll get the perception how we missed one out of 120. This 120 was just in the distribution system.
that's correct.
And we actually did additional tests following this when it was discovered, but that's in the next monthly report, so it doesn't count. So we did extra work, made sure there was no problem, but still, this is a EPA rule under a failure to monitor, and so we've got to do this tier 3
EPA or
publication.
EPD?
Well, it's EPA, the overall Clean Drinking Water Act. So we've got this notice, we're gonna have this discussion at a work session on October 13th.
Why
Next
did we-
work session.
Why did we fail to do one? We
They
just
missed
forgot?
one. They
Just miscounted.
they
Bottom
missed
line,
one.
we had 119, we thought it was 120. We didn't know it until we reported. And it was too late to do anything about it. So now we do 5 extra every month. So we'll never do this again. So,
They were going through some personnel changes at the plant at the time and other things.
COVID, Cindy, COVID.
It's in November.
This is pre-COVID.
This was last year. So, as soon as that is over, there's a letter that we have to do. We'll put it in with our bills. So starting in October, probably the third week, there'll be some inserts in the water bills that go out, and people who are on electronic bill will get a direct mail. And we're required to notify our customers that we made a mistake, and this is what we're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. But we wanted the board to know about it and go ahead and let our public know, and our customers who may watch this know what's coming.
All right, next is a request for water lines. Maybe you want to start that one?
I will do that. As you may remember, back in the sales tax program, there was some money put in for potential water lines on places that didn't have it. I know Commissioner Mills, over the years, you've had a lot of requests, and we talked to the board early on. I know there was a heavy demand for where the first SPLOST dollars should go with road projects and all, and you asked us to come up with some way of measuring. So what we've got in your package is a list. I worked with GIS. First off, let me say, I talked to the health department. I talked to see if they had any record of wells going bad, because I believe you may have suggested that. I talked to them about areas that had high septic failures, maybe thinking that's something. So they didn't really have anything they could share with us. So the only thing we could do to maybe quantify or give you something to go off of on where you should spend your money is to just rank them sort of by the number of homes that are on the roads. So we had
Well,
GIS create a map
All right, so this is a list
of
of
county
all
maintained.
okay.
And it's a list, it started as a list of just county maintained roads that our GIS system does not show has water on it. Now, this is a tool. Don't take this for, it hasn't been verified. We haven't been out and measured these distances. Some of these road distances could be different. So this is a starting point. I would say it's the step one of a measuring point or a kickoff point. Everything will need to be verified. But then Jill had a list over the years, way back from when we used to use SPLOST dollars. You might remember we did that very often. And so we had people on that list that had requested water, 20 years ago. And so she pulled her list together and we included them on this spreadsheet. We took the GIS system, Al Luthringer created this spreadsheet for me and these road distances. And then I plugged in a estimated cost per foot. It's all the same. And it comes up with estimated cost per road. And then Al also gave me the number of parcels that were on the road. So that tells you how many people you might be able to serve. Is it 1 or is it 50? And I divide it, and you get the estimated cost per parcel. That's the way the board did this back, 15 years ago when we did it. They had a threshold that they liked to see, and if it was over that, they felt like it was too expensive, not enough parcels served.
Right.
And they used that for a while, but then there was always unusual circumstances. There could have been bad wells, could have been bad water. It wasn't locked in to use this. But this was their guidebook, this method was somehow something they used to determine where they wanted to spend the money and do these projects. There's a map in here also. Now, you can't see it. I could give you a bigger one. It's an electronic version, but we did include the little map, and you can see the yellow lines on here. Now, there are a few private roads on here, and that's because we had specific requests on them. And so we went and added, there's some private water systems that people have had issues, so there are a handful.
Hopewell Road doesn't have county
Part of
water.
it.
A section.
There's some that's just, there's some sections.
You ain't heard nothing from Hope Drive, Tim?
Nope, not anymore.
Thank God.
Now, the one you see highlighted, Thunder River Way, it's on the second page. That is one of discussion right now in Molly's district. I believe it's in Molly's district.
That's correct.
It
It's
is.
close to Pools Mill,
Yeah.
just west of Pools Mill, and that's a private system. They built that without putting water in. They didn't do the
Now they
private
want
roads,
water.
and what they
Private
did.
water, driveway, road, and private water.
And there was a time when they could do that because the lots were like over 2 acres, and
Hope Drive.
they could have all had
Yes,
wells. But what the developer did, rather than putting in wells, they bought a 2-inch water meter from us, and then they ran their own line, and then they had a community system.
Served about 15.
15 parcels. And now they're wanting to get rid of it, and so they've reached out, and they've also been working with the engineering department about taking the road
Yeah.
over for county maintenance, which link these two together if we're gonna put water on it. And they would like for us to take the system over, but it doesn't meet our standards. It's small diameter, it won't have fire protection. It'd just be something that has to be replaced in a few years. We've always shied away from taking over
Yeah.
water pipes that we
So
don't
through
even
this
know where
formula,
they go.
Tim, for example, on Thunder Way, let's just use that one.
Yeah.
Remember from Hope Drive, of the 20,000 cost per
Yeah.
household, how much do they have to pay
Per parcel.
per person?
Normally with sales tax money, it's the normal tap fee or less. There was a time when the board would reduce the tap fee for sales tax, but that's the board's option to do it. You could ask the community to help.
What's the normal fee, Tim?
Tap
Because we
fee now is-
charge Mr.
we charge them a regular tap fee, $16, 22 something.
Is that what we charged Roland Alvarez?
Right. That's a discussion the board will want to have is, when they first started the sales tax program, the reason they cut the tap fee, they said if you'll tie on now and pay $12 a month, even if you're not using it, because a lot of people want to stay on their wells, we'll cut the tap fee down to $300. But they wanted customers, and they needed those customers. And we had people that paid $12 a month for years and never tied on.
Yeah, but that was how many years ago?
That was 1988.
We just need to set a policy.
Yeah, you can decide how you want to do that, and that could factor into which roads
Way
you.
it don't have to keep coming back again.
But again, I mean, the one you looked at, so average cost is over $20,000 per parcel, and if everybody tied on.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, we're gonna get $2,200 for a tap fee.
And honestly, that's why a lot of these don't have
Average
water.
cost is
They didn't have,
$20,000.
the 5,000 was the range, the original we did way back when. If it was over 5,000 per house or per parcel, the board just said it's not feasible. We'll never get that money back from revenue, because
But see, that's why I think you ought to look at, I mean, you just had your CPA come in here and talk about being under this and under that and the cost and all those things. I can look at District 4, and we sat down and talked to people, and the politics reeks all over why down Whitmire Road, why one road got it and another didn't, and it was because of who was known. If we walk into that meeting, the politics is gonna come forth again, because immediately I'm gonna get called from people that I go to church with and other people, and of running it down this road and running it down that one and vice versa, when really y'all ought to go and make with your CPA and with your staff and look at geographically the areas, because I can tell you, a lot of these roads are like out in an area of some of the higher density areas, or a lot of them are around, or what I can look at, are around that Crystal Cove area, where Lake Residential was, high density, were put in those areas, or it looks like it to me.
You're gonna have a lot of those.
Where you've got septic tanks failing too. There's a lot of that, where you're getting a lot of bad souls out in that area. I mean, it's not a lot of wealthy folks anyway. Some of them aren't. You've got Rex Gravitt. Some of those developments where people are being charged high rates on their water too that can't afford it. Some of Pete's area too. I mean, those people are paying premium water where they can't even afford it.
The only thing we need to do is at least, this is sort of a
I mean,
return on a
you've
yield,
got
you know?
Medlock Road, I get complaints constantly on, cause it's like a dirt road down through there. And poor old John and them have to go out there all the time and scrape it. That's 45 homes down Medlock Road. That's a pretty big one. But look at where water and sewer can wind up making better money. I mean, water can make better money. And don't let it up to a bunch of commissioners with politics, and they're gonna say, oh, go down there and you put four. Oh, that's because I go to church with so-and-so, run it with 4. Well, that's gonna be terrible for y'all.
Since it's sales tax money, if this were water and sewer funded money, you might not do any of these. You'd say, it'll be 200 years before you never make, if you had to make a profit without charging them.
If
That's why
I
the
get
sales
a vote
tax money
though,
does
I'm
it.
gonna say to do these last. Because,
But y'all may give us direction to do just what you're saying. Y'all develop a policy, and we'd like to see where your cost is below 5,000 or 10,000.
Papa Ben's gonna say, let me go over this list and I'm gonna pick out who my buddies are and I'm gonna let them.
But
But if we do it as a board, then he has to go, he will never get the tide, right?
it
shouldn't.
That's right. I mean,
That's what we
if
should do.
y'all give us a general
You'll do
policy,
that.
I know some of the money,
we can do that. We certainly can do it.
That
But right
way
now,
you
but
take-
see, also, there's $10 million pot of money here, and we've talked about using part of it for economic development. So do we spend
I
5
don't think
million, or 10 million, or 2 million? What money do we really have to do this?
I don't think we know yet until we do the economic development first.
Well,
Tim, my thought would be, if you find where it's a safety issue, the well's contaminated, have a set of some money aside for that, where it's a legitimate bona fide drinking water issue. Does that make sense?
And we run into those.
Yeah, we've run into those, but other than that, I wouldn't.
I mean, we're getting ready to have a meeting with Tim, about economic development. Me and Todd are on that committee, we're not calling it a committee. And we're gonna have a study on it and look at that. I mean, we might not, I don't know if we'll have, what we'll run into or do on that, but we are gonna have a meeting on it.
the reason this is coming forward now, cause we understood there was discussion about what to do with that 10 million and we've had this for, since last fall, but we knew there wasn't a real push to really get started. But Commissioner Cooper is getting pushed to decide if we want to run water on Thunder River Way, and that's one of these roads, so we said
But will
we
it
need to
even
look at.
qualify? Will hers even qualify for any of
But this
it?
is one of those things, and you told me for day one, if they get it, everybody's gonna want it, so you gotta have.
I don't think hers will qualify for it. Yours didn't qualify for it.
No.
I've had them over and over again that didn't qualify
No,
for it.
right.
I mean, if you got a policy, you gotta stick to the policy.
That's right.
I mean, we could take $1 million and start down the list and see where we stop. We could take 2 million and see where we stop. And then
But I
just
don't
go
think
down
you
the
do it
list.
that way. I don't think you do it down the list. I think you go for the biggest bang for the buck.
I think it would, well.
Unless it's
Because-
done in chronological order. Maybe you've done it that way. I mean,
Well,
I
it's,
think you need to go with where you can get the biggest,
That's the way it's sorted,
Okay.
biggest bang for buck, cause the lowest cost per parcel means I'll get 26 customers per so many feet and 31, so it's already, it's relative. It's the same cost per foot for each road, and it's the number of customers, and if I
And
do
it'll
this, I
be
get
based
100.
upon how many of those customers will sign on. Potentially, because if you go to 26 and you only get 6 that will take it, then that is blown
So
that.
then,
Right. It
if
needs to
you
be
want
all
us to,
done.
we would get a commitment from those people before we move forward.
Right.
Yep.
And those are the types of guidance and decisions we would need to have, and what you would want us to
One for
do.
306,000, I don't think that's
Well,
gonna,
see, and $1 million probably only gets the first 8. That's about what it would get you, is about the first 8, we'd spend about $1 million. I just did quick math in my head.
I'll guarantee you're gonna have some on there that will not, they won't want it, they won't
Yes,
wanna
sir.
pay a nickel.
Yes, sir.
And I think one of the criteria ought to be, we'll help you if you help us. So if you all wanna buy into it, I think that'll, don't you, Cindy?
Other counties, have, Fulton
Everybody
County's got
buys
a
in.
policy that you get paid by the foot. If they're willing to run water on a road, and they expect a certain number of percentage of the people along that road to kick in with $200 per foot, or no, it's not that, it's $50 per foot, I believe. And once they get enough money, then they'll run that road, and sometimes other people will pay the cost for their neighbors. So we could come up with a cost share if that's what you want us to do. That's just not what had ever been done before, to make the money go further.
I think you should, because if I want it, if I'm putting myself as a citizen and I want it, then I would be willing to pay, but they're subsidized, so they're gonna have to pay all of it. But if I want water, I ought to have some skin in the game, I would have to pay something.
And the argument from the people who were there before, they go, well, it's not, the people before me didn't have to do this, they got the free water, and
You mean,
years ago, when they did this years ago, they tried to get water all over the county, and they didn't always make financial.
well, years ago, you could also get, free, it was a different world,
So, that's the kind of guidance we need. You want us to bring back something?
We need the guidance, is what
And,
we're.
Don't you
Well, we
agree,
can
Cindy?
make him, why don't we make a recommendation from Water and Sewer Committee?
Yeah.
Can do that.
Yeah. I think we need to come up with a cost share percentage, a formula where, and standardize it. That way, if you get a request, we don't ever see it.
No, yeah, I would rather the
it-
board
it
not
just-
get involved in
You
that.
guys apply the formula, and if they want it, then a certain, and I'd make that percentage high, like 90% or higher.
That tie on, or is a certain revenue we collect?
Well, first of all, if the residents, if they come forward, I'd make it a very high percentage.
So your estimate is probably about $100 for every linear foot of line you have to run. That'll run.
You can't make it too high or nobody will do it.
That's
Right.
You're gonna kill the project if you make it too high.
That's right.
Think about what we did, let's compare it, what we did when, Advanced Disposal bought. We ran the line.
Yeah.
And they bought, and all they had to do, and we had people that wouldn't do it,
Yes.
and that was and they were claiming that it was contaminated.
Bad water.
Bad water contaminated, and Advanced Disposal was giving them the tabs. We ran the line, and all they had to do was run the line to their house. But now, they lived on acreage. It was out in the country. But these were people that were claiming that they were on contaminated water. But
Yeah,
then,
they might have to run a 4,500 feet service line.
yes,
So based on that, Tim, when you're in your experience, so why don't you come up with maybe a formula? And then we can maybe talk about it before we.
Well, we need to do something pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what, yeah.
Are we thinking 50% and 50%? Customers pay 50%, we pay 50%? Is that, or?
you were saying less than.
I don't think they'll ever have the money to do it.
It's expensive.
I just did if a customer paid an average 200-foot lot width, and if you just asked for $5 of the $100 a foot, that's $1,000 extra dollars.
Yeah, they won't do that.
Just for
But
that.
if you set up a
that
payment
one line.
plan,
They won't do that. They'll just say no.
I'm just looking at it from my standpoint. If I had a payment plan and I could add $5 of
Well, we hadn't looked at that,
something,
financing it out.
You don't have to pay it all at one time, add it to your water bill, $5 extra, something like that.
Some of these, we're trying to get them to go off of these other water systems though and come to ours.
Or it's the customers who are asking
Customers
for
are.
that more than, yeah, exactly. Those are specific requests we've had.
And you'll notice some of them just want fire protection. They've got a smaller water line, but they want fire.
Those on that
protection.
Cox Road, that's what they wanted so bad.
And their insurance rates will probably go down.
They will, so they're saving.
But
And their well, kind of, if they have a well, then they don't have to have a pump and all that.
We'll draft up some.
Draft up
kind of
something,
a,
and then we can,
But,
if we can find a point where we get the most people that wanna buy into it.
I think participation rate.
I have
and the
made a
dollars per-
commitment though that we're bringing this to the work session. So we'll bring it to the work session, but we'll say now that Water and Sewer Committee has asked us, staff, to bring a policy back to Water and Sewer Committee for y'all's discussion and
What you think,
recommendation.
Cindy? And that's, yeah. That way, otherwise, we'll spend 10 hours on the board
Oh, yeah.
talking about this. So
Yes.
y'all come up with a good formula, and then we won't have to reinvent German schmear brick. It's my favorite.
I mean, what I'm afraid of is they're gonna say you've got to divide it and spend so much per district.
That could happen.
And if that happens, you're not gonna get the same, I mean, you might have on some roads, 3 people, I mean, which if you look at this, I mean, some of these are like,
Well, Cindy, you know what though, I see, but this should be what's the countywide, and leave the districts out and have
The
the
majority of them are gonna be in.
have the criteria set for,
because they didn't get water to begin with.
Right. so I would be okay with Cindy's to make up because for all those.
They don't have water.
To go where the need's the greatest. Would you?
Well, they just don't have water. I mean, they haven't been
Right,
watered
right.
from day one.
Right.
And it's because it just didn't run, they
It's
didn't
not
get any.
financially feasible.
You
Yeah.
can see
Run
these
it such a
numbers
long
get pretty
distance.
high, pretty quick. I guess, what would you think someone would be willing to pay? I mean, is there a threshold where it's over $5,000?
Unless they've got a well problem, they're not gonna wanna pay the normal tap fee, to be honest.
No, they're not.
$200.
And a lot of
One
these
the-
people
I got a
don't
good
have
well.
it.
I told Michael Ben, the first house I lived in was in Forsyth County, they were running
Michael
road on
Bennett.
my road where I lived, and I told Michael I was staying on my well. He didn't like that much.
Well, but, I mean, honestly, you're talking, a lot of these places, I can look at the
They
road,
can't afford it.
they can't afford
They
it.
can't
No,
afford it.
no, that's right.
Where
I
you were
mean-
talking about, they can't afford the tap fee.
No,
Right.
they cannot. A lot of them cannot.
And could we even throw in something
This could
like
be
if
some
you're
sort of
over
economic
60,
development now too.
60
Some of
years
these
old or something,
Places
60,
out there,
some age.
Archer and.
give them a break, some kind of scale, we can,
I'm telling you, some of these places, I mean, slumdog millionaires have been in control. They're paying a water rate on some of these places that is the county, I mean, they're charging them out it's unbelievable what they're paying. That they have worked into their rent rates and stuff, it's shameful.
so let's, yeah,
All right, so we'll bring it up at work session, but we'll make the recommendation, or we'll say that Water and Sewer Committee's heard this, we'll bring this back, so. All right, we're down to other business on our list. We've been here about an hour and 50 minutes. I had hoped we wouldn't go this long, but any other business we have to take up today?
The only thing I wanna mention, and I have not had a chance I thought about calling Ford Graven and asking him if this, and you never know what you're gonna get. And I don't know that I'd get a straight, James McCoy just made the comment to me that Ford had made this comment to him back in the day, talking about Tyson's. And James and I weren't even talking about the Tyson's facility, definitely wasn't talking about Tyson's up here. He said Ford made the comment to him that the only reason he had been able to be successful with the coming water and sewer was because he had Tyson's as his customer. He said that if it hadn't have been for having Tyson's, he would have never had the resource to be able to expand. Having them as the customer gave him the luxury of having the money to be able to expand the coming water and sewer plant, that had he not had them, he would have never had the money to be able to expand their lines and to be able to have it go as far and to have it.
I can absolutely understand that, and I think he's probably right.
And he said, had I not had them, I couldn't have done it.
I don't think they treated their sewer though, I think it was water.
Yeah.
Tyson's had their own discharge.
But they were a big customer of the percentage, and you had one, we were the other big customer when we came along. So they had two very large, very profitable customers.
But Tyson's,
And,
their sewer,
they had a rate.
they only treat a small part of their sewer.
Now the city come and treats,
Now they treat almost all their sewer, but
in the
they
day they
only,
had their own, a long time ago, but it's been many years since they still do a little, the pre-treat, I guess, down here. No, Tyson still got a discharge.
I think
So
they
that's
still.
But they-
treat some. But, on the drinking water side, you're exactly right. They used to there was just a few million gallons that they treated, and Tyson's was buying like 2 million gallons a day out of 6, so, and, steady customer, day in, day out.
Yeah.
Didn't change. The
And
risk
would
is,
always pay every month.
Yeah.
Always had the money.
and, it did. I don't know if they gave them a lower rate. I know their internal city coming rate for years was a lot lower than our wholesale rate they charge the county customers. And then-
I think that, if Troy told me, I think they pay them like $60,000 a month on their water. If Troy told me right. So I don't know if that's discounted or what.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If they have a special rate.
But what was your point?
Well, I don't know how much they do on their sewer now. I mean, my point was if we could work out something with Tyson's, maybe we could be able to take Tyson's on as a customer and then pay for a lot of our future infrastructure as well. If we could figure that out. I mean, if we could figure out how to bring them on as a customer, they could pay us enough to run our future lines too.
You could easily, in our rate model, you could plug in just the volume and flow from one, call it a mega customer, and see how that affects your revenues. So that's, that equates to X number of residential homes, and you come up with your profits. But you have to remember, but it also depends on how you got your rates set. And right now, our rates are really just designed to cover our costs, so we're not really set up to be making money. We're just trying to keep our costs as low as we can and cover future costs. So,
If you wanted to put a small component of the rate in there for future expansion, you could do that in a rate study. That's how you would do
I just
something
don't, I think that because we've never had a customer like that it terrifies us and we don't know how to handle it. I think it's like we just don't know what to do with it.
One of the values to me, though, is you have a steady customer and they're gonna pay you. They're gonna pay you every month, and they're gonna pay you whatever the bill is. And you don't have to worry about discounting or bad debts or anything else with them. They're gonna pay you. And that's pretty valuable. They're gonna pay you on time. And that's pretty valuable for us to have that.
Our current rates, though, are not set up to cover capital costs. That's all on the tap. The way we set it up, we were instructed water pays for water, sewer pays for sewer, growth pays for growth, existing customers pays for customers. So our current rate structure on treating wastewater would not have any profit in there to pay for extending the system. So we'd have to change, we'd have to mark that up to have a profit that could go toward building that plant. It's just covering the cost to run that plant is the way the current rate structure is set up. But you can change that, and that's what others do. They build a small increase in it, and you take that money and.
But we have always been, this was what we were talking about with economic development.
Mm-hmm.
We have always been driven by residential development, and we've always, when it came in 2000 and the residential market drove that, And I can remember just being a real estate agent, and Michael Bennett's name was a good one to bring up, because Michael Bennett held off the water and sewer. I mean, literally, as a commissioner, I can remember him, he did not want it until he got ready to sell on Post Road. And then when he allowed it to come with his hundreds of acres, he literally, it was like he lifted the arms. And you want to know why Post Road looks like Post Road? Michael Bennett, I mean, he decided, and all of a sudden, I mean, the development came and that Res 3 got looking like it did. Michael Bennett.
I didn't realize it till recently, and it just, I don't know why, but residential growth, like you said, extended all of our lines. They could afford it. They can spread the cost out
They paid
per
for it.
house, and they can sell it. So they were always willing to extend these lines.
They paid
It wasn't
for it
until
all.
recently that I realized that the commercial people just can't do that and make a profit in their
Industrial
business.
can't.
So you're gonna have to bring it to their front door. They can't. There's a few, I mean, the collections did, but we helped fund that line. Bluegrass, when it got started, the county helped run that a little
But that was a
bit,
big development.
So-
That was a lot of people
Right,
coming
so
in together.
For commercial,
They
they just
can't.
can't make the numbers work at our rates to make a profit.
Well, it's not our rates, it's our connection.
Connection fees.
That's
Where
what-
residential can put that and put it in a per house, you know, $2,000 or $3,000 per house, and they can do it, and you're right.
So our infrastructure got, and the county at one time even had incentives. I mean, I can remember y'all working deals for developers to come in. They would forward and pay for the lines, and then they would get to be able, their tap fee would be reduced to do it. They had a reduced fee for taps, and they would forward the infrastructure, and they would put it in. That was a common, I mean, that went on for a good long time.
Mostly residential, a few commercial took advantage of that, but again, and in commercial, a lot of times did infill. Sometimes the residential ran it by where the commercial
Yeah.
needed to go, and they benefited from it, but there's a few areas up along 400 that, the commercial people.
But that's why we're a bedroom community. That is exactly, I mean, because residential comes first. Any real estate agent will tell, I mean, bedrooms are what drive commercial, and the commercial comes behind it. I mean, it's what comes last, and it's usually just retail and different things that come last. And
It's not industrial.
I mean,
It's not
it'll come,
manufacturing.
If it comes at all, right?
yeah. And so the residential came in, and it, you know, that's what paid the sewer. It just paid for it.
But the cost of these plants scare the commercial people too, when you're committing. A lot of places don't put the entire connection fee in the tap fee. They put part of it in their rates to do that. Because you take a business it can't afford to pay $50,000 in sewer capacity. He'd rather pay for it over 20 years in his rates. But
And maybe that's, I mean, maybe the board needs to give us direction to redo our rate study and put, I mean, we've got a CIP. Barry, all the projects you talked about today are funded through the CIP, right? So maybe we look at taking, 30% or 50% of the cost in our CIP and rolling that into the rate structure. So that your rates pay 30 to 50% of your capital cost over time. And that will lower your impact fees by 30 to 50%.
And even on a house, it doesn't make, the first owner of that house has to absorb that entire cost, but the next 30 years, multiple future owners could be helping pay for that too. But the flip side, the criticism that the board was getting was that existing customers didn't want to be paying anything for new customers, residential, and that's why the rate structure was the way it was.
But see, I think if you look at that 400 area around Tyson's, there is all kinds of Res 6 that's already been voted on. They've already been approved.
Before your time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that one that just walked in the other day is 880 townhomes. And they want to downzone it to 650.
Who zoned all those in?
Charlie Laughing House. No growth. No growth, Charlie. But there's a lot more all around it. And I mean, I've got people, I mean, just like the Bennett property, I mean, they're wanting to sell their property. I don't even know how to call her back. I mean, and they're in Hampton service area. Hampton can't take them. We're not gonna approve Hampton to go cross basin transfer.
We should not.
No. Hampton can't take them. We've got to deal with Hampton. I mean, we've got to deal with that. All of that in that area, we have got, this is a water and sewer decision. This is a board decision. But this is all that area. We've got Tyson's, we've got Hampton, we've got Gracemont, or whatever you call it, that's
Mountain
all,
Ridge.
it's all that same area.
Yep.
And we're gonna have to make a decision on it all.
And we could give Hampton some relief if it's in an area, we could do some trading. And we could remove some of our flow from them.
They're gonna say no.
But now remember, we bought 500,000 gallons of capacity in that plant to get it started. And what are they now, 600,000 or so, 700,000? Total flow?
That they're actually treating, or just their capacity, and they're only treating 300,000 or 400,000, John?
Yeah, it's been a while since I.
Because it's actual flow versus peak daytime flow.
Okay.
Oh, and they act like that.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve
They can't
Gooch
get
acts
rid of
like
it anymore.
that plant is in supreme condition.
They've self-imposed.
It was not
so
last
they're-
time we looked
They're
at it.
not taking any additional flow on, because they can't get rid of it. That's what we.
They have
do
nowhere to
all along.
discharge.
They don't have.
That's why they're wanting to
they don't
go
have
into
enough
the
land
Etowah.
application or storage to get rid of it, and that's
And people say that the golf course, I mean, like it's soppy.
probably, imagine a wet year like this, they still have to apply it even though it's raining. They could buy some of our capacity back, we could take the customers, we could move some flow, we could.
But all
do some
that's
things.
doing is lessening the flow coming into that plant that they have to treat. I'm not sure that's the
That's
right
what take the
strategy.
Bennett property and replace it with the Bennett property flow.
I'm not sure that's the right strategy though in the long run.
I had a meeting about Lanier Land the other day for about 2.5 hours. And they asked me how far away we were with sewer there. That it would save us a lot, it would help if, we weren't having to use so much land.
Well, when we were building that, I evaluated putting it on sewer then, the numbers just didn't work.
And I said,
But
They
I
could have
tried.
tied into that force main that is going to Hampton, but we could have used our capacity.
we're nowhere near,
Yeah,
mean,
they could get sewer now. They'd have to have a pump. Lanier Land, the Lanier Land Park, say Hampton's got a force main that goes right in front of it. And you could put a pump in and pump right into that force main. They would be willing to take it. But it's the cost, it was the tap fee cost we don't have it to treat at our plant, but we still got some capacity in the Hampton Basin that I guess they would have to agree to take it at that spot.
Yeah.
But, as long as the force main can handle it, it shouldn't be a problem.
we don't have any
But it
money.
was a dollar issue with finding the capacity, that was the.
I think so.
All right, it's a little after 5 now. Any other business to come before the committee? Hearing that, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So,
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's a unanimous decision. Thank you all.
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.